Welcome back to another journey through history. Tonight, we leave the safety of the shore behind and travel into the vast open ocean, a place that has inspired wonder, exploration, and mystery for thousands of years. For most of human history, the sea has connected distant lands while simultaneously hiding countless secrets beneath its endless horizons. Ships carried merchants, explorers, sailors, and entire communities across dangerous waters. Most voyages were routine. Some became extraordinary, and a few entered history as mysteries that have never been completely solved. Our story tonight begins with one such mystery. A ship is discovered drifting across the ocean. At first glance, nothing seems unusual. The vessel remains afloat. The cargo is still aboard. Food and supplies are present. The ship appears capable of continuing its voyage. But when sailors climb aboard, they discover something deeply unsettling. The ship is completely empty. Every member of the crew has vanished. No one knows where they went. No one knows why they left. And no one ever finds a definitive answer. Tonight, we'll explore the world of 19th century seafaring, retrace the discovery of the abandoned vessel, examine the evidence left behind, and follow the many theories that have attempted to explain one of history's strangest maritime mysteries. So settle comfortably, relax, and allow the gentle movement of the ocean to carry you back into the age of sail. Together, we'll investigate the ship found with no crew. And before we begin, let me know in the comments what city you're watching from tonight. Don't forget to like and subscribe. It really means a lot to me. Every story, every memory, and every place matters. And together we keep history alive. Now let's begin. Part 1: Life at Sea in the Age of Sail. A routine voyage begins. As the first light of dawn spreads across the horizon and turns the ocean from black to deep blue, we begin our story not with a mystery, but with something remarkably ordinary. That may seem surprising, because history's strangest maritime mysteries often become famous for their unanswered questions, their strange discoveries, and their unsettling endings. Yet almost every great mystery begins as an ordinary day. Before a ship becomes legendary, it is simply a ship. Before sailors become part of a historical puzzle, they are simply people performing familiar duties. To understand the mystery that lies ahead, we must first understand the world in which it occurred. Imagine the ocean during the 19th century, an age when vast sailing vessels connected continents and carried people, cargo, and information across enormous distances. Steam power was beginning to appear, but much of the world's commerce still depended upon the wind. Merchant ships crossed the Atlantic, the Pacific, and countless coastal routes, carrying everything from food and textiles to timber, machinery, and personal letters. Every voyage represented a gamble. Weather could change suddenly. Navigation required skill and experience. Communication with the outside world disappeared the moment a ship vanished beyond the horizon. For sailors, the sea was both workplace and home. Weeks or even months could pass without sight of land. Daily life followed a routine shaped by necessity. Crews repaired sails, maintained rigging, cleaned decks, checked cargo, prepared meals, and stood watch through every hour of the day and night. The work was demanding but familiar. Most voyages passed without major incidents. The ocean was dangerous, but experienced sailors learned to respect its risks while continuing their duties. Imagine standing aboard one of these vessels as morning arrives. The sails catch a steady wind. Waves move gently against the hull. Seabirds occasionally circle overhead. The crew begins another day much like the one before. A sailor climbs into the rigging to inspect lines. Another checks the condition of supplies. The captain studies charts and calculates position using navigational instruments. Everything appears normal. Such scenes unfolded thousands of times across the world's oceans. Most never became history. Yet hidden within this ordinary routine is the reason maritime mysteries are so fascinating. Ships were isolated worlds. Once at sea, they existed largely beyond immediate observation. If something unusual occurred, there might be no witnesses beyond those aboard. Storms could erase evidence. Time could destroy records. The ocean had an extraordinary ability to keep secrets. This reality created an environment where mysteries could emerge and remain unsolved for generations. Sailors understood this better than anyone. They knew how quickly circumstances could change. A calm morning could become a violent storm by afternoon. A routine voyage could encounter unexpected dangers. Yet they also understood that fear alone could not govern their lives. Trade depended upon movement. Families depended upon commerce. Nations depended upon maritime connections. Ships continued sailing because they had to. Imagine a vessel preparing to depart from a busy harbor. Workers load cargo into the hold. Merchants review paperwork. Crew members secure equipment. Family members gather on the docks to say farewell. There is excitement, anticipation, and perhaps a little anxiety. Nobody expects to become part of a mystery. Nobody imagines that future generations might study their voyage. They simply believe they are beginning another journey. This confidence is important because it reminds us that history is experienced from the inside rather than the outside. We know how certain stories end. The people living them do not. For the sailors in our story, the voyage ahead appears ordinary. The weather seems favorable. The ship appears seaworthy. Supplies are adequate. Plans are clear. Every visible sign suggests success. As the harbor gradually disappears behind them and the open ocean stretches ahead, the vessel becomes one more ship among countless others crossing the sea. Days pass. The rhythm of maritime life settles into place. Watches change regularly. Meals are prepared. Navigation continues. Conversations occur on deck during quiet moments. The horizon remains vast and empty. Nothing appears unusual. Yet somewhere beyond the limits of ordinary observation, history is already preparing a mystery. The crew cannot see it. The captain cannot predict it. The ocean offers no warning. What begins as a routine voyage will eventually become one of the strangest maritime stories ever told. But for now, beneath clear skies and favorable winds, the ship sails onward exactly as expected, carrying its crew toward a future none of them could possibly imagine. As the voyage continues and the ship moves farther from land, the routines of life at sea become increasingly important. Maritime travel in the age of sail depended upon discipline, cooperation, and patience. Every person aboard had responsibilities that contributed to the survival of everyone else. The ocean could be beautiful, but it demanded respect. Imagine the crew settling into familiar patterns as days blend together. Sunrises and sunsets mark the passage of time. Watches rotate through the night. The captain monitors progress carefully, comparing observations of the stars and sun with information recorded in the ship's logbook. Navigation remains both an art and a science. Long before satellites and electronic instruments, sailors relied upon experience, mathematics, and careful observation. Their success depended upon accuracy. A small error repeated over many days could place a ship far from its intended course. Yet experienced captains often guided vessels across thousands of miles with remarkable precision. Life aboard ship is rarely exciting in the dramatic way later stories sometimes suggest. Most of the time, success means routine. A well-run vessel is a predictable vessel. Crews prefer calm conditions because calm conditions allow work to be completed safely. Repairs are easier. Cargo remains secure. Supplies last longer. The ocean may seem endless, but daily responsibilities provide structure. Imagine sailors mending ropes worn by constant use. Others scrub decks to prevent deterioration. Some prepare meals in cramped conditions below deck. Others stand watch, scanning the horizon for ships, weather changes, or hazards. These tasks may appear ordinary, yet they represent the foundation of maritime survival. Every successful voyage depends upon countless small actions performed correctly. The captain occupies a unique position within this floating community. Imagine him reviewing charts late into the evening by lantern light. His responsibilities extend beyond navigation. He must manage people, maintain discipline, monitor supplies, and respond to unexpected challenges. A good captain combines authority with judgment. The crew depends upon his decisions. Trust, therefore, becomes essential. Maritime life creates relationships unlike those found ashore because everyone shares the same confined environment for extended periods. Cooperation is not merely desirable. It is necessary. As the ship advances across open water, weather remains a constant concern. Imagine clouds appearing on the horizon. Experienced sailors observe them carefully. Weather forecasting during this period relies largely upon observation rather than technology. Changes in wind, pressure, cloud formations, and wave patterns can provide clues about approaching conditions. Sometimes storms arrive despite preparation. Sometimes favorable winds continue for weeks. The ocean remains unpredictable. Yet unpredictability alone does not create mystery. Sailors encounter uncertainty regularly. What makes certain voyages memorable is the appearance of events that cannot be easily explained. At this stage, however, nothing suggests such an outcome. The ship appears healthy. The crew appears capable. The voyage continues normally. This normality is perhaps the most unsettling detail when viewed from the future. If obvious danger existed from the beginning, the mystery would feel less mysterious. Instead, everything seems ordinary. Imagine evenings aboard the vessel after work has been completed. Sailors gather for conversation. Stories are exchanged. Some discuss previous voyages. Others speak about destinations, families, or plans for the future. Human life continues even in isolated environments. Laughter, friendship, boredom, and ambition travel across the ocean alongside cargo and supplies. These moments remind us that the crew are not characters in a legend yet. They are simply people living their lives. Somewhere ahead lies the event that will transform an ordinary voyage into an enduring mystery, but that transformation has not yet occurred. The ship remains a functioning community moving steadily through the vastness of the sea. Night falls. Stars appear overhead in extraordinary numbers, undimmed by city lights. The vessel continues forward beneath the guidance of wind and human skill. Watches change quietly. The ocean stretches endlessly in every direction. From the perspective of those aboard, tomorrow will likely resemble today. The voyage feels routine. The future seems predictable. And perhaps that is why the mystery that follows will become so memorable. History's strangest stories rarely announce themselves in advance. They emerge unexpectedly from ordinary circumstances. They begin on calm seas beneath familiar skies. They begin with routine voyages, capable crews, and confident captains. They begin exactly like this one. And as the ship sails deeper into the open ocean, carrying its crew farther from land and closer to destiny, no one aboard can know that they are approaching the moment when everything will change, leaving behind a question that future generations will struggle to answer. Part 2: The mysterious vessel appears. First sight on the horizon. As the days pass and the steady rhythm of ocean travel continues uninterrupted, the world beyond the ship remains vast, quiet, and largely empty. The sea has a remarkable way of creating both familiarity and isolation at the same time. For sailors in the age of sail, most days are spent surrounded by little more than water, sky, wind, and clouds. Occasionally another vessel appears on the horizon, breaking the monotony and providing a welcome reminder that other people exist beyond the boundaries of their floating world. Such encounters are usually routine. Ships exchange signals, identify one another, and continue on their separate journeys. Yet every so often, a sighting occurs that feels different from the very beginning. Our story now moves to one such moment. Imagine a cool morning in the open ocean. The weather is calm. Gentle waves roll beneath a pale sky streaked with thin clouds. A lookout stands high above the deck, scanning the horizon as generations of sailors have done before him. The task requires patience. Most of the time, there is little to see. The horizon remains empty, stretching in a perfect circle around the vessel. Then, far in the distance, something appears. At first, it is only a tiny shape interrupting the line where sea meets sky. The lookout narrows his eyes and studies it carefully. Another ship. Nothing unusual about that. He calls down to the deck, and soon several crew members are examining the distant vessel through telescopes. The captain is informed. Observations begin. The ship seems to be under sail. It appears intact. From this distance, there is no immediate cause for concern. Yet as the hours pass and the gap between the two vessels gradually closes, small details begin attracting attention. The ship's movement seems strange. Experienced sailors develop an instinctive understanding of how vessels behave. Wind, sail position, and steering all influence movement in predictable ways. This vessel does not appear to be responding normally. Instead of maintaining a steady course, it drifts and wanders slightly, as though no one is actively guiding it. At first, alternative explanations seem possible. Perhaps the crew is occupied with repairs. Perhaps weather conditions have affected navigation. Perhaps the ship recently endured difficulties. The ocean is full of situations that can produce unusual appearances. Yet curiosity continues growing. Imagine standing on deck as the mysterious vessel becomes clearer. The sails are visible. The rigging appears largely intact. No obvious damage can be seen. If anything, the ship looks surprisingly healthy. This observation deepens the mystery rather than reducing it. A damaged vessel drifting aimlessly would make sense. An apparently seaworthy vessel behaving strangely does not. The captain orders closer inspection. Maritime tradition encourages assistance when ships appear to be in distress. Sailors understand that today's observer may become tomorrow's victim of circumstance. Helping others at sea is both practical and humane. As the ships draw nearer, crew members search for signs of activity. They expect to see sailors on deck. They expect movement around the rigging. They expect someone to respond to visual signals. Yet something feels wrong. The deck appears unusually quiet. No figures can be seen moving about. No obvious attempts are made to communicate. Imagine the growing unease among those watching. Humans are remarkably sensitive to absence. We notice when expected things fail to appear. A merchant vessel crossing the ocean should show evidence of life. Someone should be adjusting sails. Someone should be standing watch. Someone should be visible. Yet the ship remains strangely silent. Signals are raised. Flags communicate requests for identification and status. The standard language of maritime communication is employed carefully. Under ordinary circumstances, responses would follow. Instead, nothing happens. The mysterious vessel continues drifting. Wind fills its sails. Waves carry it forward. But no answer comes. The captain studies the situation thoughtfully. Every possibility carries implications. If the crew is injured or ill, assistance may be urgently needed. If the ship has experienced some form of emergency, delays could prove costly. Yet caution remains important. Unknown situations require careful evaluation. As afternoon light brightens the sea, details become unmistakable. The vessel is indeed moving without apparent control. No one appears on deck. No signals are returned. The silence now feels less like coincidence and more like a clue. Imagine the atmosphere aboard the observing ship. Conversations grow quieter. Speculation begins. Sailors discuss possibilities. Some suggest illness. Others wonder about storms encountered earlier in the voyage. A few mention stories of abandoned vessels encountered in distant waters. Maritime communities preserve such tales for generations. Most are rare. Some become legends. Yet everyone agrees on one point. Something unusual is happening. The ocean has transformed an ordinary day into a puzzle. The captain eventually reaches a decision. Closer investigation is necessary. The ship cannot simply be ignored. Too many questions remain unanswered. Too many signs suggest distress. As preparations begin for a boarding party, the mysterious vessel continues drifting peacefully through the afternoon sunlight. From a distance, it appears almost serene. The sails remain standing. The hull rides steadily upon the water. There are no signs of battle, fire, or catastrophe, and yet the silence surrounding it feels increasingly unnatural. Somewhere between normality and mystery, the ship waits. The answers lie aboard, but no one yet understands just how strange those answers will be. The sailors preparing to investigate expect to find a problem. They do not expect to encounter one of the most unsettling mysteries in maritime history. As the decision is made to investigate the drifting vessel, anticipation spreads throughout the observing ship. The ocean often rewards patience with routine outcomes. Distress signals are answered. Mechanical problems are identified. Crews receive assistance. Most maritime concerns eventually reveal understandable causes. Yet something about this situation resists ordinary explanation. The closer sailors look, the more unusual the circumstances appear. Imagine standing at the rail and watching the mysterious ship through a telescope. Details continue emerging. The sails are not torn apart by storms. The masts remain standing. The vessel shows no obvious signs of catastrophic damage. In many ways, it appears capable of completing its voyage. And yet it drifts alone across the sea as though abandoned by the very people responsible for operating it. The contradiction becomes impossible to ignore. A ship can be damaged and abandoned. A ship can be lost during a storm. A ship can sink. But a seaworthy vessel moving through calm conditions without visible crew presents a far more troubling question. Where has everyone gone? Imagine the captain assembling a boarding party. Such expeditions require caution. Unknown circumstances may involve injury, disease, structural hazards, or other risks. Experienced sailors prepare carefully. A small boat is lowered into the water. Volunteers gather equipment. Instructions are given. The process unfolds with professional efficiency, yet beneath the routine lies curiosity. Every member of the boarding party understands that they are approaching something unusual. The small boat begins crossing the distance separating the two ships. Waves rise and fall gently beneath it. The mysterious vessel looms larger with every passing minute. From sea level, its silence feels even more striking. Imagine approaching a ship that should be full of activity and hearing nothing beyond the wind and water. No voices, no footsteps, no commands, no movement. Human beings instinctively expect evidence of life aboard large vessels. The absence creates an atmosphere difficult to describe. As the boat reaches the hull, sailors look upward. The ship towers above them, motionless except for the natural movement of the sea. Ropes hang quietly. Sails shift slightly in the breeze. Everything appears ordinary except for the missing people. Calls are made toward the deck. No answer comes. Louder calls follow. Still nothing. Imagine the feeling of uncertainty growing stronger. Even before stepping aboard, the boarding party realizes that whatever happened here cannot be entirely routine. Eventually, they climb onto the vessel. The moment carries a strange weight. History often turns on small actions that seem insignificant at the time. A sailor places his foot upon an unfamiliar deck, expecting perhaps to discover injured crew members or a simple navigational problem. Instead, he enters a scene that will remain famous for generations. The deck is empty, not temporarily empty in the ordinary sense, but completely deserted. No sailors rush forward to explain the situation. No captain emerges from a cabin. No passengers appear from below. The ship feels abandoned. Yet abandonment alone does not explain everything. Imagine examining the details. Equipment remains present. The vessel has not been stripped of valuables. There are no obvious signs of struggle. Nothing immediately suggests piracy or violence. The scene feels less like the aftermath of a dramatic event and more like a place where people simply vanished. Sailors move cautiously across the deck, searching for clues. Every object becomes important. Every detail might contribute to understanding what occurred. The mystery deepens with each observation. If the ship had been evacuated during an emergency, why does it still appear so seaworthy? If disaster struck suddenly, where are the signs of panic? If foul play occurred, where is the evidence? Questions multiply faster than answers. Imagine opening doors and peering into cabins. The same unsettling pattern continues. Evidence of human presence remains everywhere, yet the humans themselves are missing. Personal belongings may still be present. Supplies remain aboard. Daily life appears interrupted rather than concluded. It is as though the crew expected to return at any moment and simply never did. Such impressions are difficult to shake. Human beings are accustomed to connecting places with people. When those connections are broken unexpectedly, the result feels eerie. The boarding party experiences precisely this sensation. They are walking through a functioning ship that lacks the one element necessary to make sense of it: its crew. As the search expands, the realization becomes unavoidable. This is not a routine maritime incident. This is a genuine mystery. The ship has been found. The vessel remains afloat. Yet those responsible for sailing it have disappeared without explanation. News of the discovery will eventually travel across oceans and generations. Investigators will examine evidence. Historians will propose theories. Writers will tell stories. But at this moment, none of that has happened yet. There is only the ship, the silence, and the growing awareness that something extraordinary has occurred. The ocean, which so often conceals its secrets beneath waves and storms, has revealed a puzzle instead. And standing upon the deserted deck, surrounded by unanswered questions, the boarding party begins the search for clues that will occupy curious minds for years to come. Part 3: Boarding the Empty Ship. The strange scene on board. As the boarding party steps fully onto the deserted vessel and the sounds of their own movements become the only human noises aboard, the reality of the situation settles heavily upon everyone present. From a distance, the drifting ship had seemed unusual. Up close, it becomes deeply unsettling. Sailors are accustomed to silence in certain forms. They understand the quiet of calm seas, the stillness of early morning watches, and the lonely vastness of the open ocean. Yet this silence feels different. It exists where activity should be. It fills spaces designed for people. Every rope, sail, ladder, and doorway seems to suggest the recent presence of a crew that has somehow vanished. Imagine standing on the deck and looking around carefully. The ship is not a wreck. This fact immediately distinguishes it from many maritime disasters. The hull remains afloat. The masts stand upright. The rigging appears functional. Sails still catch the wind. If anything, the vessel looks remarkably capable of continuing its voyage. There are signs of wear, certainly, as there would be on any ship that had spent time at sea, but there is no obvious catastrophe. No burned timbers, no shattered mast, no massive breach in the hull. The absence of visible disaster creates the first major mystery. Why would an entire crew abandon a ship that appears seaworthy? The boarding party begins a systematic search. Such searches follow practical logic. Experienced sailors know where important information is likely to be found. They examine the deck first, looking for signs of damage, unusual cargo shifts, or evidence of recent activity. Every observation raises new questions. Equipment remains in place. Necessary tools have not been gathered hastily as one might expect during a desperate evacuation. Some lines remain secured exactly as they should be. The vessel appears abandoned, yet not in a manner that suggests panic. Imagine moving toward the captain's quarters. This room often serves as the administrative center of a ship. Navigation charts, logbooks, correspondence, and official documents are typically stored here. The boarding party enters cautiously. The cabin feels strangely ordinary. Furniture remains present. Personal items may still occupy familiar positions. Nothing immediately suggests violence. Yet the captain himself is nowhere to be found. The same pattern emerges repeatedly throughout the vessel. Evidence of life exists everywhere, but the people connected to that life are absent. Human beings instinctively seek explanations. Faced with unusual circumstances, the mind begins constructing possibilities. Perhaps illness struck the crew. Perhaps a storm forced evacuation. Perhaps there was an accident involving the ship's boats. Yet every theory encounters difficulties. The visible evidence refuses to fit neatly into any single explanation. Imagine opening a storage compartment and finding supplies still aboard. Food remains available, Water has not been exhausted. Essential provisions appear sufficient. This discovery matters because it eliminates certain possibilities. A crew driven to desperation by starvation or thirst would leave different evidence behind. Here, necessities remain present. The ship does not appear to have been abandoned because survival aboard became impossible. The boarding party continues below deck. Lantern light illuminates narrow passageways and cramped compartments. Shadows shift as sailors move carefully through unfamiliar spaces. Every room tells the same story. The crew seems absent rather than destroyed. There are no obvious signs of conflict. No widespread damage suggests mutiny or attack. No clear evidence points toward piracy. Valuable cargo often remains untouched. This detail is particularly significant. Pirates seeking profit generally take goods. Yet here the cargo appears largely intact. Imagine the emotional atmosphere among the boarding party as these observations accumulate. Curiosity gives way to unease. Unease deepens into genuine fascination. Maritime life teaches sailors to expect practical causes for unusual events. Storms explain damage. Disease explains illness. Accidents explain injuries. Yet this ship seems unwilling to provide such clarity. Every answer generates additional questions. The more thoroughly the vessel is examined, the stranger it becomes. Even small details attract attention. A chair positioned near a table. Navigation instruments left behind. Personal belongings resting where their owners last placed them. Ordinary objects acquire extraordinary significance because they represent traces of lives interrupted unexpectedly. Imagine finding evidence that the crew had been conducting routine activities shortly before disappearing. Such clues suggest normality rather than crisis. Meals may have been prepared. Duties may have been performed. Daily life appears to have continued until some unknown moment altered everything. This impression proves difficult to ignore. If disaster struck, it seems to have done so suddenly. Yet sudden disasters usually leave marks. Here, the marks are subtle or absent. The ocean beyond the hull remains calm. Sunlight filters through open spaces. Waves strike the ship rhythmically. Nature appears indifferent to the mystery unfolding aboard. The contrast is striking. One of history's strangest maritime puzzles exists within an environment that appears completely ordinary. The boarding party records observations carefully because they understand the importance of evidence. Every detail may prove relevant later. Yet even at this early stage, a troubling realization emerges. The ship itself may provide clues, but it may never provide certainty. Some mysteries reveal answers immediately once examined. Others grow deeper the more closely they are studied. This vessel belongs firmly to the second category. As the search continues, sailors move through a floating world frozen in time. The crew is gone. The voyage has ended. Yet the reasons remain hidden. And with every passing hour, the abandoned ship becomes less a maritime incident and more a historical enigma. One that will challenge investigators, historians, and curious minds for generations to come. As the search expands into every accessible corner of the vessel, the boarding party gradually develops a clearer picture of what is present aboard the ship. Equally important, however, is what is missing. Mysteries often depend as much upon absence as presence. A broken object can reveal a cause. A missing object can reveal a decision. The abandoned ship contains both kinds of evidence, yet neither offers a straightforward explanation. Imagine sailors examining navigational areas where charts are normally consulted and positions recorded. The details matter because ships operate according to routine procedures. Captains maintain records. Officers track progress. Instruments help determine location. When investigators later study maritime mysteries, these elements often provide critical clues. On this vessel, however, the available information raises as many questions as it answers. Some records may indicate the ship's recent movements. Others may appear incomplete. Certain items expected aboard remain present, while others seem absent. The pattern is confusing rather than clarifying. Imagine the boarding party discussing observations quietly among themselves. Sailors are practical people. They prefer explanations rooted in experience. One man suggests that severe weather may have frightened the crew into abandoning ship. Another wonders whether a sudden emergency created the illusion of greater danger than actually existed. A third speculates about equipment failure. These ideas are reasonable. Maritime history contains examples of crews making difficult decisions under uncertain conditions. Yet none of the suggestions fully explain the evidence. The ship still appears capable of sailing. Supplies remain available. Valuable cargo remains aboard. Why would everyone leave? The question grows more persistent with every room examined. Imagine entering crew quarters. These spaces reveal aspects of daily life often invisible elsewhere. Personal belongings, clothing, and small possessions provide glimpses into individual routines. Here again, signs of human existence are abundant. The crew clearly lived and worked aboard this vessel. Their presence lingers in every compartment. Yet the people themselves have vanished. The effect is unsettling because it transforms ordinary objects into reminders of absence. A folded garment becomes a clue. A personal item becomes a mystery. Every detail emphasizes the same fact. People were here and now they are not. Investigators often search for evidence of violence in such circumstances. Imagine examining walls, floors, and equipment carefully. Signs of struggle can reveal important information. Yet obvious indicators remain elusive. There is no clear scene of conflict. No widespread damage suggests a desperate fight. No immediate evidence points toward murder or piracy. This absence does not eliminate those possibilities entirely, but it weakens them considerably. The ship seems abandoned rather than conquered. Imagine standing on deck during the late afternoon and looking across the ocean. The vastness of the surrounding sea adds another dimension to the mystery. If the crew left voluntarily, where did they go? A ship's boat might explain departure, but a small boat crossing open ocean faces enormous risks. Survival would be uncertain. Distances are vast. Weather can change rapidly. Leaving a functioning vessel is rarely a decision made lightly. Maritime tradition generally favors remaining aboard a seaworthy ship whenever possible. The abandoned vessel therefore challenges common assumptions about sailor behavior. Whatever happened must have seemed convincing enough to persuade an entire crew to leave behind their best chance of survival. Yet the evidence explaining that decision remains frustratingly incomplete. Imagine the discussions continuing among those conducting the search. Each new observation generates competing interpretations. A missing item suggests one possibility. An intact cargo suggests another. A seaworthy hull contradicts both. The mystery becomes a puzzle composed of pieces that refuse to fit together neatly. This complexity explains why certain maritime stories endure. Simple incidents are resolved and forgotten. Complex incidents remain alive because they resist closure. The abandoned ship possesses exactly this quality. As evening approaches, the atmosphere aboard grows even more eerie. Shadows lengthen across the deck. The sun moves lower toward the horizon. The vessel continues floating calmly, indifferent to the questions surrounding it. Imagine standing beside the rail and listening to the wind move through the rigging. Under ordinary circumstances, such sounds would accompany the presence of sailors carrying out their duties. Here they exist alone. The ship seems suspended between activity and emptiness, between history and mystery. News of the discovery will eventually spread far beyond the immediate scene. Officials will investigate. Newspapers will report details. Theories will emerge. Some explanations will emphasize weather. Others will focus on human judgment. Still others will venture into speculation. Yet none of those future debates have begun yet. At this moment, there is only the ship itself and the evidence it contains. The boarding party has confirmed something extraordinary. A vessel capable of remaining afloat has been found without its crew. The disappearance appears complete. The explanation remains absent. The mystery has officially begun. As darkness gradually approaches and preparations are made to secure the abandoned vessel, those who first stepped aboard carry away more questions than answers. They have examined cabins, decks, supplies, cargo, and equipment. They have searched for signs of disaster. They have looked for evidence of violence. They have considered practical explanations. Yet certainty remains out of reach. The ocean has offered a glimpse of one of its secrets without revealing the secret itself. And as the deserted ship drifts quietly beneath the fading light, it enters history not merely as a vessel found at sea, but as a question that refuses to answer itself. Part 4. Clues Left Behind. What the crew found. As the abandoned vessel is secured and the initial shock of the discovery begins to settle into careful observation, the mystery enters a new phase. Finding a ship without a crew is extraordinary, but discovery alone is not enough to explain what happened. Questions demand evidence. Investigators, sailors, captains, and maritime officials now turn their attention toward the clues left behind. Every mystery exists within the details. The challenge is recognizing which details matter. Imagine the scene during the hours following the boarding. The excitement of the initial search gives way to a more methodical process. Experienced sailors understand that small observations often prove important later. A misplaced object, a damaged piece of equipment, a missing record, or an unusual condition aboard the vessel may reveal information invisible at first glance. The ship itself becomes a silent witness. Though incapable of speaking, it contains traces of events that unfolded before the crew disappeared. The task now is to interpret those traces correctly. Imagine moving slowly through the vessel once again, this time not merely searching for people but studying the environment carefully. The deck remains largely intact. The masts still stand. Sails, though weathered by exposure, continue serving their purpose. Nothing immediately suggests a catastrophic storm capable of destroying order aboard. This observation matters because severe weather often leaves unmistakable signs. Torn canvas, broken spars, damaged rigging, and scattered equipment usually accompany truly violent conditions. Here, the evidence appears less dramatic. The ship bears signs of normal wear but not obvious devastation. Investigators take note. If weather played a role, it may have done so in a more subtle manner. Attention shifts toward the ship's navigational systems. Imagine examining the charts, instruments, and records used to guide the vessel across the ocean. Navigation forms the heart of maritime travel. Every captain depends upon accurate information regarding position, direction, and progress. Logbooks are particularly valuable because they preserve a running account of daily events. Weather observations, course changes, notable incidents, and navigational calculations often appear within their pages. Yet when investigators examine the available records, they encounter another puzzle. Certain entries exist. Others may be missing. The timeline appears incomplete. This incompleteness becomes significant because it limits understanding. Every missing detail creates room for uncertainty. Historians often face similar challenges when studying the past. Records survive unevenly. Some information disappears forever. The mystery aboard this ship is amplified by precisely such gaps. Imagine the investigators discussing the last known entries. The ship appears to have been functioning normally until relatively recently. There are no obvious warnings predicting disaster. No dramatic declarations of crisis. No final message explaining the crew's intentions. Instead, the records seem to stop unexpectedly, leaving the story unfinished. The effect is almost literary, as though a book ends halfway through its final chapter. Readers naturally want to know what comes next. The ship refuses to provide the answer. Cargo becomes another focus of attention. Imagine descending into the hold and examining what remains aboard. Cargo often represents the economic purpose of a voyage. Merchants invest money. Crews transport goods. Successful delivery creates profit. In cases involving piracy or theft, cargo frequently becomes a key piece of evidence because valuable items disappear. Yet here, much of the cargo remains present. This fact immediately complicates certain theories. If criminals boarded the ship seeking profit, why leave valuable goods behind? While not impossible, such behavior seems unusual. Investigators therefore hesitate to embrace explanations involving simple theft. The vessel appears abandoned, not looted. Supplies are examined next. Imagine inspecting food stores, water reserves, and essential provisions. Maritime survival depends upon careful resource management. Shortages can create desperation. Adequate supplies create stability. Here again, the evidence proves puzzling. The ship does not appear to have exhausted its resources. Food remains available. Water remains available. The crew does not seem to have faced immediate starvation. This observation eliminates another potential explanation. Whatever caused the disappearance, it was probably not a gradual decline driven by hunger or thirst. Human beings generally leave clearer signs when confronting such conditions. Personal belongings provide some of the most emotionally powerful clues. Imagine entering cabins and finding evidence of everyday life. Clothing remains. Personal possessions remain. Objects associated with individual routines remain exactly where they were last placed. Such discoveries create a strange sense of presence. The crew seems close yet unreachable. Their lives remain visible through the traces they left behind. Every item becomes a reminder that real people occupied these spaces shortly before vanishing. Investigators cannot help imagining the moments preceding their disappearance. Did the crew expect to return? Did they believe they were leaving temporarily? Did they understand the risks they faced? The objects offer no direct answers. They merely preserve questions. The absence of obvious violence continues attracting attention. Imagine searching carefully for signs of conflict. Maritime history contains examples of mutiny, piracy, and personal disputes. Such events usually leave evidence. Damage occurs. Blood appears. Equipment is disturbed. Yet the ship remains strangely orderly. Not perfectly orderly, as no vessel at sea ever is, but orderly enough to challenge assumptions about violent explanations. Investigators begin recognizing a pattern. Many common maritime disasters fail to fit the available evidence. Storms seem insufficient. Theft seems unlikely. Starvation seems unsupported. Violence seems unproven. The ship resists simple classification. Every clue simultaneously reveals and conceals. The deeper the investigation goes, the more complex the mystery becomes. Imagine standing once again on the silent deck as evening approaches. The vessel continues drifting beneath an ordinary sky. Waves strike the hull gently. The clues collected so far suggest that the crew left the ship voluntarily or semi-voluntarily rather than being removed by force. Yet if that is true, why leave a vessel capable of remaining afloat? Why abandon supplies, cargo, and shelter in the middle of the ocean? Such questions grow increasingly important. The clues have narrowed possibilities without producing certainty. Investigators now possess evidence. What they lack is explanation. And as the mystery deepens, the abandoned ship begins revealing a quality shared by history's most enduring puzzles. Every answer seems to create new questions. As investigators continue examining the abandoned vessel and organizing the information gathered during the initial search, attention gradually shifts from individual clues to broader patterns. A single observation rarely solves a mystery. Meaning emerges through relationships. The condition of the ship must be compared with the condition of its cargo. The state of the supplies must be considered alongside the absence of the crew. Missing items must be evaluated in relation to items left behind. This process resembles assembling a puzzle whose pieces originate from different boxes. Some appear connected. Others seem contradictory. The challenge lies in determining whether a coherent picture exists at all. Imagine the discussions taking place among experienced sailors reviewing the evidence. Maritime professionals possess practical knowledge developed through years at sea. They understand how ships behave under stress. They understand how crews respond to danger. Their expertise helps distinguish ordinary anomalies from truly unusual circumstances. Many of these individuals have encountered storms, equipment failures, navigational errors, and emergencies. Yet even they find the abandoned vessel difficult to explain. The ship appears neither entirely safe nor obviously endangered. It exists in a gray area where interpretation becomes uncertain. One clue attracting particular attention involves the vessel's boats. Imagine examining the equipment normally used for transportation between ship and shore or for emergency evacuation. If a boat is missing, investigators naturally consider its significance. A missing boat suggests that at least some members of the crew may have left intentionally. Yet this possibility introduces new questions. Why would they leave? Under what circumstances would abandoning a larger vessel seem preferable to remaining aboard? Maritime tradition generally discourages such decisions unless danger appears immediate and severe. The ocean is vast. Small boats offer limited protection. Leaving a functioning ship is rarely the safest choice. Therefore, if the crew entered a smaller craft, they must have believed circumstances justified the risk. Understanding that belief becomes central to the investigation. Imagine examining the physical condition of the vessel more carefully. Small signs of wear, minor damage, or evidence of recent difficulties may appear. None seem catastrophic independently. Yet, investigators wonder whether several modest problems combine to create a larger sense of danger. Human decision-making often depends upon perception as much as reality. People respond not only to actual risks but also to risks they believe exist. This distinction proves important because the abandoned ship may represent a case where perception and reality diverged. Perhaps the crew believed the vessel was in greater danger than it truly was. Such possibilities begin entering discussions. Another significant clue involves the timeline. Imagine reconstructing the ship's final known movements using available records. Investigators compare log entries, navigational information, weather reports, and estimated positions. The process resembles tracking footprints across shifting sand. Some traces remain visible, others have disappeared. Yet enough information survives to suggest that the ship's abandonment occurred relatively recently before discovery. This fact matters because it reduces certain uncertainties. The vessel did not drift empty for years. The disappearance appears connected to specific events occurring within a limited period. Narrowing the time frame helps focus attention, though it does not provide definitive answers. Weather records become increasingly important. Imagine maritime officials consulting reports from other ships operating in the region. Storms leave broader evidence than abandoned vessels alone. If severe weather occurred, nearby ships may have experienced it as well. Investigators compare accounts carefully. Some reports describe challenging conditions. Others describe manageable seas. The information remains inconclusive. Weather may have contributed to the mystery without fully explaining it. This ambiguity becomes a recurring theme. Every clue seems capable of supporting multiple interpretations. Imagine the emotional dimension of the investigation. Beyond practical concerns lies a human story. Real people disappeared. Families may await news. Friends may wonder what happened. Maritime mysteries are not merely intellectual puzzles. They involve lives interrupted unexpectedly. Investigators recognize this reality even as they focus upon evidence. The personal belongings left aboard reinforce the point. Every object once belonged to someone. Every cabin once housed a living individual. The silence aboard the vessel reflects human absence rather than abstract mystery. This awareness adds urgency to the search for answers. Yet urgency does not guarantee success. As days pass, investigators encounter a frustrating truth. The ship contains clues, but not enough clues. Evidence points in several directions simultaneously. Certain theories appear plausible. None appear definitive. Imagine standing before a map covered with possible routes and explanations. Each path seems reasonable for a short distance. Eventually, however, certainty disappears. The available information simply does not extend far enough. Historians often confront similar limitations. The past rarely preserves itself completely. Missing records, lost witnesses, and vanished evidence create permanent uncertainties. The abandoned ship exemplifies this challenge perfectly. It offers enough information to inspire investigation but not enough to conclude it. As a result, the mystery begins acquiring a life of its own. Questions spread beyond the vessel itself. Could fear have influenced decisions? Could an accident have created a misunderstanding? Could a temporary emergency have produced irreversible consequences? Such possibilities multiply rapidly. Imagine the investigators recognizing that their role is changing. Initially, they sought factual observations. Now they are beginning to interpret those observations. Interpretation introduces subjectivity. Different people emphasize different clues. Different experiences produce different conclusions. The mystery therefore expands rather than contracts. The ship becomes a mirror reflecting the assumptions of those studying it. As darkness settles over the sea and the investigation enters its next stage, one conclusion becomes unavoidable. The abandoned vessel has provided evidence, but not closure. The clues left behind illuminate fragments of the story while leaving its central question unresolved. Something happened aboard this ship. The evidence confirms that much. Yet the precise sequence of events remains hidden behind a wall of uncertainty. And because certainty remains out of reach, the mystery continues, drifting through history much like the ship itself drifted across the ocean, carrying answers that seem forever just beyond reach. Part 5: Official Inquiries and Maritime Questions. Searching for answers. As news of the abandoned ship spreads from port to port and maritime authorities begin receiving reports about the strange discovery, the mystery enters a more formal stage. The initial excitement of finding a crewless vessel gradually gives way to official investigation. Sailors may speculate. Passengers may tell stories. Newspapers may publish dramatic headlines. Yet governments, shipping companies, insurers, and maritime officials require something more substantial. They need answers. A drifting ship without a crew is not merely an unusual curiosity. It represents a practical problem. Cargo has value. Ownership must be determined. Maritime laws may apply. Families deserve information. Most importantly, understanding what happened could help prevent similar incidents in the future. The search for answers therefore becomes both a legal and a human undertaking. Imagine officials gathering documents connected to the voyage. Shipping records are reviewed carefully. Cargo manifests are examined. Correspondence related to the vessel is collected. Investigators attempt to reconstruct events from the beginning. Every successful inquiry starts with context. Before understanding how a mystery unfolded, one must understand the circumstances surrounding it. The ship did not appear suddenly in the middle of the ocean. It departed from somewhere. It had a destination, carried people, cargo, and expectations. By tracing these elements, investigators hope to identify clues invisible during the initial search. Imagine a room filled with maps spread across large wooden tables. Maritime officials compare routes, weather reports, and navigational information. The vessel's intended course is plotted carefully. Locations mentioned in surviving records are marked. Distances are calculated. The ocean itself becomes part of the investigation. Geography influences every maritime event. Currents affect movement. Winds shape decisions. Coastal features create opportunities and dangers. Understanding where the ship traveled may reveal why the mystery occurred. Yet even at this stage, certainty remains elusive. The ocean preserves movement poorly. Ships leave no permanent tracks behind them. Investigators must rely upon indirect evidence. Witness testimony becomes another important source of information. Imagine interviewing sailors from other vessels that operated in the same region. Perhaps someone saw the ship during its voyage. Perhaps weather conditions were observed. Perhaps unusual activity attracted attention. Maritime communities are connected through shared experience and communication. Information travels through conversations, reports, and personal accounts. Yet witness testimony introduces its own challenges. Memory is imperfect. Observations vary. Different individuals notice different details. Investigators must separate reliable information from speculation. This process proves difficult because unusual events encourage rumor. The more mysterious a story becomes, the more likely people are to embellish it. Newspapers contribute significantly to this dynamic. Imagine reporters learning about a ship discovered adrift with no crew aboard. Such stories attract attention immediately. Readers are fascinated by unexplained disappearances. Editors recognize public interest. Articles begin appearing. Some emphasize factual details. Others focus on dramatic possibilities. The mystery starts expanding beyond the confines of maritime investigation and enters the broader public imagination. This shift creates both opportunities and complications. Public attention encourages further inquiry, but it also generates misinformation. Investigators must work carefully to distinguish evidence from storytelling. Maritime law adds another layer of complexity. Imagine legal officials examining the circumstances surrounding the abandoned vessel. Questions of ownership arise. Who controls the cargo now? What rights belong to those who discovered the ship? What responsibilities exist toward missing crew members and their families? Such matters may seem secondary to the mystery itself, but they influence the investigation significantly. Legal processes require documentation. Documentation encourages scrutiny. Every recorded detail contributes to the growing body of evidence. Yet despite these efforts, a frustrating pattern emerges. The more thoroughly investigators examine the available information, the clearer one fact becomes: there is no obvious explanation. Common maritime disasters fail to fit comfortably. Imagine reviewing possibilities one by one. A violent storm severe enough to force abandonment should leave clearer signs of damage. Piracy should produce evidence of theft or conflict. Mutiny should create indications of internal struggle. Disease should leave traces affecting the condition of the vessel. Yet the ship resists simple categorization. It occupies an uncomfortable space between known causes. This resistance fascinates investigators while simultaneously frustrating them. Human beings prefer stories with clear conclusions. The abandoned ship refuses to cooperate. Imagine officials comparing notes late into the evening. One investigator emphasizes weather. Another focuses upon human decision-making. A third suggests a combination of factors. None can prove their case conclusively. The evidence remains incomplete. Every theory explains certain observations while leaving others unresolved. This imbalance prevents closure. As a result, the inquiry gradually shifts from certainty to probability. Investigators stop asking what definitely happened and begin asking what most likely happened. The distinction is subtle but important. Historical mysteries often reach this stage. Absolute answers disappear. Plausible explanations remain. The abandoned ship is becoming such a case. Families seek certainty. Officials seek certainty. Historians will later seek certainty. Yet certainty remains beyond reach. Imagine the emotional weight of this realization. Missing crew members are not merely entries in official reports. They are individuals whose lives have vanished into uncertainty. The absence of answers affects real people. This human dimension prevents the mystery from becoming a purely intellectual exercise. Every unanswered question carries personal consequences. As the inquiry continues, investigators gather evidence diligently, review records carefully, and debate possibilities extensively. Yet despite their efforts, the central mystery remains intact. The ship was found. The crew was gone. The reasons remain unknown. And as official inquiries proceed, it becomes increasingly clear that solving this puzzle will require more than facts alone. It will require interpretation, imagination, and perhaps acceptance that some questions may never be answered completely. As the official investigation progresses and the available evidence is examined from every possible angle, maritime authorities begin confronting one of the most challenging aspects of any historical mystery: the limits of knowledge. In many cases, investigations succeed because evidence points consistently toward a particular conclusion. Witnesses agree, physical clues align, timelines make sense. The abandoned ship presents a different situation entirely. Here, evidence exists in abundance, yet clarity remains scarce. The facts themselves are not necessarily disputed. The ship was discovered drifting without its crew. Supplies remained aboard. Cargo remained aboard. The vessel appeared capable of continuing its voyage. These observations are widely accepted. The difficulty lies in explaining how such conditions came to exist. Imagine a group of experienced maritime investigators seated around a large table covered with reports. Every document represents an attempt to bring order to uncertainty. Weather observations, witness statements, navigational records, cargo inventories, and legal correspondence all contribute pieces of information. Yet the pieces refuse to assemble neatly. Some suggest danger. Others suggest safety. Some imply voluntary abandonment. Others imply unforeseen circumstances. The resulting picture remains incomplete. One of the most important questions concerns decision-making. Imagine yourself aboard the vessel shortly before the crew disappeared. What circumstances could persuade experienced sailors to leave a ship that still appears seaworthy? Maritime culture generally discourages abandoning vessels unnecessarily. A ship, even a damaged one, often provides greater safety than a small boat exposed directly to the ocean. Therefore, investigators focus increasingly on the possibility that the crew believed immediate danger existed. The key word is believed. Whether the danger was real or perceived may be impossible to determine. Human beings act according to the information available to them at the time, not according to what future investigators will eventually discover. This insight becomes central to many discussions. Imagine a scenario involving uncertainty rather than catastrophe. Perhaps unusual conditions developed aboard the ship. Perhaps strange sounds were heard. Perhaps equipment malfunctioned. Perhaps weather and other factors combined to create fear. Under such circumstances, people might make decisions that seem irrational later but appeared reasonable in the moment. Investigators find this possibility intriguing because it explains some evidence without requiring extraordinary events. Yet it remains difficult to prove. The challenge of proof haunts the entire inquiry. Consider the nature of maritime evidence. The ocean is an unforgiving environment for investigators. Rain washes away traces. Salt corrodes materials. Time alters conditions continuously. Witnesses may never be found. Physical evidence may disappear forever. Unlike a crime scene preserved on land, a ship at sea exists within a constantly changing environment. This reality limits certainty. Even the most skilled investigators cannot recover information that no longer exists. Imagine reviewing weather data from the period. Some reports indicate rough conditions in certain areas. Others describe manageable seas. The ocean rarely behaves uniformly. A storm affecting one vessel may leave another untouched. This complexity complicates efforts to reconstruct events precisely. Investigators recognize that weather may have influenced the crew's decisions without leaving dramatic damage behind. The absence of catastrophic destruction does not necessarily mean conditions were calm. Yet again, certainty remains elusive. Public interest continues growing throughout this period. Imagine readers across multiple ports following newspaper accounts eagerly. The mystery captures attention because it combines familiar elements with extraordinary circumstances. Ships are common. Ocean voyages are common. Yet a vessel found empty in the middle of the sea feels almost surreal. The story invites imagination. People begin proposing explanations of their own. Some remain grounded in maritime experience. Others venture into speculation. Human beings are naturally uncomfortable with unanswered questions. When evidence fails to provide closure, imagination often fills the gap. Investigators must navigate this environment carefully. They understand the importance of remaining focused on evidence. Yet they also recognize that complete certainty may never emerge. This realization marks a turning point. The inquiry gradually shifts from solving a mystery to managing one. Rather than expecting a definitive breakthrough, officials begin evaluating probabilities. Which explanations fit most of the available facts? Which require the fewest assumptions? Which remain consistent with known maritime behavior? Such questions guide analysis. Imagine the investigators discussing their conclusions. They may disagree regarding details, but many share a common observation. The ship itself does not appear to have been the primary threat. The vessel survived. It remained afloat. This condition suggests that abandonment occurred before complete disaster. This observation points attention toward human perception, judgment, and decision-making. Perhaps the crew feared something that never happened. Perhaps they responded to a temporary emergency that became permanent only because they left. Such possibilities possess a tragic quality because they imply that survival may have remained possible under different circumstances. Yet once again, certainty is impossible. The missing crew cannot explain their reasoning. Their voices have vanished along with them. This absence transforms the mystery fundamentally. Every investigation depends upon evidence, but evidence alone rarely tells the entire story. Human intentions matter. Motivations matter. Perceptions matter. In this case, those elements disappeared with the people who experienced them. The result is a puzzle that remains permanently incomplete. As months pass and official inquiries draw toward their conclusions, the abandoned ship acquires a new status. It is no longer merely a maritime incident. It has become a historical mystery. Investigators compile reports. Authorities document findings. Explanations are proposed. Yet none achieve universal acceptance. The central question survives intact. What happened aboard the vessel? Why did the crew leave? What sequence of events transformed a routine voyage into an enduring enigma? Official inquiries provide valuable information but not definitive answers. The mystery remains suspended between evidence and uncertainty, supported by facts yet resistant to conclusion. And because the investigation cannot fully resolve what occurred, the story begins entering a new phase. Historians, sailors, writers, and curious readers will soon take up the search where officials left off. Theories will emerge. Debates will continue. The mystery will grow larger than the ship itself. But for now, as the formal investigation reaches the limits of what evidence can reveal, one truth stands above all others. The ocean has surrendered clues, but it has kept it secret. Part 6. Theories begin to emerge. Storms, fear, and human error. As the official inquiries reach the limits of what documented evidence can reveal, the mystery enters a new and perhaps even more fascinating phase. When facts alone cannot provide certainty, theories begin to emerge. This transition is common in historical mysteries. Investigators gather every available clue, analyze records, interview witnesses, and examine physical evidence. Yet sometimes the final answer remains just beyond reach. In such cases, human curiosity naturally takes over. Historians, sailors, journalists, and ordinary observers begin asking a different kind of question. Instead of asking what can be proven, they ask what might have happened. The ship found drifting without a crew becomes precisely this kind of puzzle. Enough evidence survives to inspire serious discussion, but not enough survives to eliminate uncertainty. The result is a mystery suspended between fact and possibility. Imagine maritime experts reviewing the evidence decades after the event. The abandoned vessel remains one of the strangest cases in seafaring history. Every theory must begin with the same fundamental facts. The ship was discovered without its crew. The vessel remained afloat. Cargo remained aboard. Supplies remained available. No obvious signs of violence explained the disappearance. These facts create boundaries. Any explanation must account for them. The challenge is that no single theory fits every detail perfectly. Yet, among the many possibilities proposed over the years, one category of explanation emerges repeatedly: weather. Imagine the crew encountering deteriorating conditions at sea. The ocean can change rapidly. Calm waters may become dangerous within hours. Strong winds, heavy waves, and reduced visibility create uncertainty even for experienced sailors. Weather-related explanations appeal to many investigators because storms have influenced maritime history for centuries. Countless ships have been damaged, lost, or abandoned due to environmental conditions. Yet the mystery vessel presents complications. Severe storms typically leave visible evidence. Torn sails, damaged rigging, broken equipment, and structural injuries often accompany truly destructive weather. The abandoned ship lacks many of these indicators. Nevertheless, supporters of weather-based theories argue that danger does not need to be catastrophic to influence human decisions. Imagine a scenario involving fear rather than destruction. Perhaps rough seas created concerns about the vessel's condition. Perhaps unusual water accumulation suggested flooding. Perhaps shifting cargo affected stability. Under such circumstances, the crew might have believed the ship was in immediate danger even if the danger later proved less severe than expected. This distinction becomes crucial. Human beings respond to perceived threats, not merely actual ones. If sailors believed the vessel might sink, abandoning ship could seem reasonable in the moment. The tragedy would arise if that judgment later proved mistaken. Consider the psychological environment aboard a ship facing uncertainty. Imagine dark clouds gathering overhead. Waves increase in size. Equipment creaks under strain. Water appears where it should not. No single factor may be catastrophic, but together they create anxiety. Experienced sailors are not immune to fear. In fact, experience sometimes increases awareness of potential dangers. The crew might interpret ambiguous signs in the most alarming way possible. Under pressure, decisions can change dramatically. Historians often find this explanation compelling because it requires no extraordinary events. Ordinary human judgment operating under stressful conditions may be sufficient. Another variation of the weather theory involves temporary emergencies. Imagine a situation where the crew lowers a small boat intending to remain connected to the ship while addressing a problem. Perhaps they believe they can return shortly. Perhaps they hope to inspect damage, manage equipment, or improve safety temporarily. Then something unexpected occurs. A rope breaks, A sudden wave intervenes. Distance increases rapidly. The crew becomes separated from the vessel. The ship survives. The people do not. This possibility appeals to many maritime experts because it explains why a seaworthy vessel could be found empty. The crew may never have intended permanent abandonment at all. Instead, a temporary measure could have evolved into irreversible separation. Yet even this theory encounters difficulties. Evidence supporting such a sequence remains incomplete. The mystery persists because every explanation depends upon assumptions extending beyond documented facts. Imagine historians debating these possibilities. One scholar emphasizes weather patterns. Another highlights maritime decision-making. A third focuses on equipment and procedural concerns. Each interpretation possesses strengths. Each leaves questions unanswered. This situation illustrates a broader truth about historical mysteries. Evidence rarely speaks for itself. Human beings must interpret it. Different experiences produce different conclusions. The abandoned ship, therefore, becomes a mirror reflecting how people understand risk, judgment, and uncertainty. Fear emerges as a recurring theme. Imagine the final hours before the crew disappeared. Whatever happened, it likely involved decisions made under conditions the crew considered significant. People rarely abandon functioning ships casually. Such actions generally require strong motivation. Fear provides one possible explanation, not irrational fear, but understandable concern shaped by circumstances. The ocean rewards caution. Sailors who ignore danger often pay a high price. Yet caution can sometimes create unexpected consequences. Leaving a vessel may reduce one risk while increasing another. The balance is difficult to judge in real time. Human error also enters discussions naturally. Imagine a small miscalculation growing larger through a chain of events. Maritime history contains many examples of accidents resulting not from incompetence but from ordinary mistakes. Navigation errors, communication misunderstandings, equipment failures, and flawed assumptions can combine unexpectedly. No individual decision may seem disastrous, yet together they produce significant consequences. The abandoned ship may represent such a case. If so, the mystery becomes deeply human. Not a story of monsters, conspiracies, or supernatural forces, but a story of people confronting uncertainty and making difficult choices. As these theories circulate and evolve, one conclusion becomes increasingly clear. The mystery may never yield a perfect answer. Instead, it offers a collection of possibilities, each illuminating different aspects of maritime life. Storms, fear, and human judgment all remain plausible participants in the story. Whether they provide the complete explanation remains unknown. Yet they bring us closer to understanding how an ordinary voyage could transform into one of history's strangest maritime puzzles. As years become decades and the mystery continues attracting attention from historians, sailors, researchers, and curious readers, the range of proposed explanations expands considerably. Human beings possess a remarkable ability to generate theories when confronted with uncertainty. Some theories remain grounded firmly in evidence and maritime experience. Others drift toward speculation. The abandoned ship occupies a unique position because it exists at the boundary between documented history and unanswered questions. Enough evidence survives to encourage serious analysis. Enough uncertainty remains to invite imagination. This combination ensures the mystery's longevity. Imagine a gathering of maritime historians discussing the case many years after the original investigation concluded. The official reports remain available, The known facts remain unchanged, yet interpretations continue evolving. One historian argues that the simplest explanation is usually the best. According to this view, extraordinary mysteries often emerge from ordinary events misunderstood over time. The crew may have encountered a situation that seemed immediately dangerous. Faced with uncertainty, they acted. Their decision, though understandable, produced unintended consequences. The ship survived. They did not. Such explanations possess a certain elegance because they rely upon familiar human behavior rather than extraordinary circumstances. Yet simplicity does not eliminate debate. Other researchers point toward specific details that resist easy interpretation. Imagine examining every clue repeatedly. Why were certain items missing while others remained? Why does the timeline appear incomplete? Why does the condition of the vessel seem inconsistent with total abandonment? These questions encourage alternative theories. Some focus on mechanical problems. Perhaps equipment malfunctioned in ways difficult to detect later. Maritime technology during the Age of Sail depended heavily upon human observation and maintenance. Small failures could create larger concerns. If the crew believed a critical system had been compromised, they might have acted quickly. Again, perception becomes central. What mattered was not necessarily the actual danger, but the danger as understood at the time. Another category of theories emphasizes environmental conditions beyond ordinary storms. Imagine unusual weather patterns, sudden atmospheric changes, or unexpected sea conditions. The ocean remains a complex environment even today. Historical sailors possessed impressive knowledge, yet they lacked modern forecasting tools. Conditions that appear manageable in retrospect may have seemed far more threatening in the moment. Historians exploring these possibilities often stress humility. Modern observers benefit from information unavailable to the crew. Judging past decisions without acknowledging this difference risks oversimplification. The crew acted within the limits of their knowledge. Understanding those limits helps explain behavior that otherwise appears puzzling. Human psychology continues attracting attention as well. Imagine life aboard a ship isolated from land, surrounded by uncertainty, and dependent upon collective decision-making. Social dynamics matter. Fear can spread. Confidence can weaken. Rumors can influence perception. Even highly experienced individuals are affected by group behavior. If several crew members became convinced that danger was imminent, their concerns might influence others. Decisions aboard ships are rarely made in isolation. They emerge through interaction. Historians examining psychological factors often note that maritime environments amplify emotions. The ocean is vast. Escape options are limited. Uncertainty carries greater weight. Under such conditions, people may act differently than they would ashore. The mystery, therefore, becomes not only a maritime puzzle, but also a study of human behavior under pressure. As public fascination grows, more imaginative theories inevitably appear. Imagine readers encountering the story for the first time. A ship found empty at sea naturally inspires speculation. Some propose unlikely encounters. Others suggest elaborate conspiracies. Over time, the mystery begins accumulating layers of folklore. This process is common. Historical mysteries often attract stories extending far beyond available evidence. The abandoned ship becomes larger than the event itself. It transforms into a symbol of the unknown. Yet professional historians generally approach such speculation cautiously. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and such evidence remains absent. The enduring appeal of the mystery lies not in supernatural explanations, but in the fact that ordinary explanations cannot be confirmed completely. The uncertainty itself is enough. Consider what makes this story different from countless other maritime incidents. Ships have been lost before. Crews have disappeared before. Storms have occurred throughout history. Yet most such events eventually fit within recognizable patterns. The abandoned ship resists categorization. It remains suspended between possibilities. This resistance keeps the mystery alive. Every generation revisits the evidence and asks the same questions. What happened aboard? Why did the crew leave? Could the tragedy have been avoided? No definitive answer emerges. The ship continues drifting through historical memory just as it once drifted across the ocean. Imagine standing once more upon the silent deck as investigators first found it. The clues remain unchanged. The absence remains unexplained. Time has added interpretation but not certainty. This realization is important because it highlights a broader truth about history. Not every question receives an answer. Some mysteries survive precisely because the evidence is incomplete. The abandoned ship teaches us about the limits of knowledge as much as it teaches us about maritime life. Historians can reconstruct contexts, evaluate probabilities, and propose theories. They cannot always recover the final missing piece. And perhaps that is why the story continues captivating people. It reminds us that the past is not a finished book. Some pages are missing. Some chapters end abruptly. Some voyages disappear into silence. As the investigation phase of our story draws toward its conclusion, the mystery remains unresolved. Storms may have played a role. Fear may have influenced decisions. Human error may have contributed. Perhaps several factors combined. The evidence supports possibilities rather than certainty. And because certainty remains absent, the abandoned ship enters the realm of legend, carrying its unanswered questions forward into the future, where historians, dreamers, and curious minds will continue searching for answers that may never fully reveal themselves. Part 7: Famous Explanations. What historians believe. As the years pass and the abandoned ship drifts from current events into historical memory, the mystery enters a new phase of existence. The official investigation may have ended, the newspapers may have moved on to other stories, and the people directly connected to the voyage may gradually fade from public attention. But the questions remain. In some ways, they become even more powerful with time. A mystery that survives its own era often acquires a unique kind of longevity. New generations encounter it without the emotional immediacy of those who lived through it, allowing them to approach the evidence with fresh perspectives. Historians, maritime researchers, and scholars begin examining the case not simply as an unsolved incident, but as a window into the world of seafaring, human decision-making, and the limits of historical knowledge. Imagine a historian sitting in a quiet archive many decades after the discovery of the abandoned vessel. Around them are shelves filled with shipping records, newspaper reports, legal documents, personal letters, and maritime logs. The mystery has become part of the historical record. The goal is no longer merely to solve the puzzle, but to understand it. Historians approach such cases differently from storytellers. While stories often seek dramatic conclusions, historians seek probabilities. They understand that certainty is not always possible. Instead, they ask which explanations fit the evidence most effectively. This distinction is important because it shapes how modern experts view the abandoned ship. Contrary to popular imagination, most historians do not believe the mystery requires extraordinary explanations. The evidence points toward human decisions made under unusual circumstances rather than supernatural forces or impossible events. Yet reaching this conclusion does not eliminate the fascination. If anything, it deepens it. Human behavior can be every bit as mysterious as the ocean itself. One of the most widely discussed explanations among historians centers upon the idea of perceived danger. Imagine the crew encountering a situation that appeared more threatening than it actually was. Perhaps water entered part of the vessel. Perhaps equipment suggested structural problems. Perhaps weather conditions amplified concerns. The crew may have concluded that remaining aboard posed unacceptable risks. From their perspective, abandoning the ship could have seemed like the safest option available. Modern observers sometimes struggle with this possibility because they know the ship was eventually found afloat. Yet the crew could not know that outcome in advance. They made decisions based upon the information available at the time. Historians emphasize this point repeatedly because hindsight can create misleading impressions. Knowing how a story ends often makes alternative decisions seem obvious. In reality, the future remains hidden from those living through events. Another explanation receiving considerable attention involves a combination of minor problems rather than a single dramatic catastrophe. Imagine several manageable issues occurring simultaneously. Weather deteriorates. Equipment behaves unexpectedly. Navigational uncertainties arise. Water appears where it should not. None of these factors alone justifies abandoning ship. Together, however, they create a sense of escalating risk. Human beings rarely respond to isolated problems. They respond to patterns. If the crew perceived a pattern suggesting imminent disaster, their actions become easier to understand. Historians often favor such explanations because complex events frequently result from multiple causes rather than one decisive moment. The abandoned ship may represent exactly this kind of situation. Maritime experts contribute another important perspective. Imagine experienced sailors reviewing the evidence with practical knowledge developed through years at sea. They understand the realities of maritime life in ways that purely theoretical analysis sometimes misses. Many point out that decisions aboard ships occur under pressure. Time may be limited. Conditions may be changing rapidly. Information may be incomplete. Under such circumstances, even experienced crews can make judgments that later appear questionable. This observation does not imply incompetence. It reflects the reality of human decision-making in uncertain environments. The sea rewards caution, but caution itself can produce unintended consequences. Historians also examine broader historical context. Imagine the world in which the crew lived. Maritime travel during the Age of Sail involved risks that modern observers rarely encounter. Communication was limited. Rescue opportunities were uncertain. Weather forecasting was rudimentary. Sailors operated within a framework of knowledge different from our own. Understanding this context helps explain actions that might otherwise seem irrational. Historians are particularly interested in avoiding anachronism, the mistake of judging past decisions according to modern standards. The crew acted within their own historical circumstances. Evaluating those circumstances carefully often reveals logic hidden beneath apparent mystery. Despite these efforts, no single explanation achieves universal acceptance. This lack of consensus is not unusual. Historical interpretation frequently involves debate. Different scholars emphasize different aspects of the evidence. Some prioritize environmental conditions. Others focus on human psychology. Still others examine procedural and technical factors. The abandoned ship accommodates multiple interpretations because the evidence remains incomplete. Yet a broad pattern emerges from these discussions. Most historians believe the mystery likely resulted from ordinary human responses to extraordinary circumstances rather than from anything supernatural or inexplicable. The challenge lies in determining exactly what those circumstances were. Imagine the enduring appeal of this conclusion. The mystery survives not because historians have failed to think carefully about it, but because the available evidence genuinely limits certainty. The ship preserves clues but not complete answers. As a result, each generation revisits the case, examines the evidence anew, and participates in an ongoing conversation. The mystery becomes a living historical problem rather than a closed chapter. Historians may never identify the precise sequence of events that unfolded aboard the vessel. Yet through careful analysis, they illuminate the world in which those events occurred. They reveal how sailors thought, how decisions were made, and how uncertainty shaped maritime life. In doing so, they transform the abandoned ship from a simple curiosity into a profound reminder of history's complexity. The mystery endures because it occupies a space between knowledge and uncertainty, inviting investigation while resisting final resolution. As historical research continues across generations and new scholars revisit the evidence left behind by the abandoned vessel, a fascinating pattern begins to emerge. The mystery itself remains unsolved, but the discussion surrounding it becomes increasingly sophisticated. Early reactions often focused on shock and speculation. Later investigations emphasized practical explanations. Modern historians occupy a position somewhere between these approaches. They recognize the importance of evidence while also acknowledging the limits imposed by missing information. This balance defines much of contemporary thinking about the mystery. Rather than seeking a single dramatic answer, many historians focus on probabilities, asking which explanations are most consistent with known facts. Imagine a group of maritime historians gathered at a conference discussing famous unsolved cases from the Age of Sail. The abandoned ship inevitably appears among the examples. Not because it is the most destructive maritime disaster or the most consequential historical event, but because it captures something fundamental about human curiosity. It presents a scenario that feels almost complete. The ship is found. The condition of the vessel is known. The cargo is documented. Yet one crucial element remains missing: the people. This absence transforms an ordinary maritime incident into a lasting puzzle. Historians examining the case often emphasize how unusual such circumstances actually are. Ships disappear frequently in maritime history. Entire crews vanish without leaving any trace. Storms sink vessels. Accidents occur. Records are lost. In many cases, investigators never even find the ship itself. Here, the opposite occurred. The ship survived while the crew disappeared. This reversal challenges expectations and helps explain why the story continues attracting attention. Human beings naturally focus on events that violate familiar patterns. The abandoned vessel does exactly that. One of the most influential modern interpretations involves the concept of reasonable error. Imagine a situation in which the crew made a decision that appeared logical given the information available at the time but proved disastrous because that information was incomplete. Historians find this possibility compelling because it reflects broader truths about human behavior. Most mistakes are not the result of foolishness. They emerge from uncertainty. People act according to what they know, what they believe, and what they fear. If the crew genuinely believed the ship faced imminent danger, abandoning it might have seemed like the responsible choice. The tragedy would lie not in the decision itself, but in the fact that the perceived danger differed from reality. Such interpretations humanize the mystery. Rather than portraying the crew as victims of inexplicable forces, they present them as individuals confronting uncertainty in a challenging environment. Another important development in historical thinking involves the role of storytelling. Imagine the mystery moving through time. Every generation retells it. Journalists summarize it. Writers dramatize it. Readers imagine themselves aboard the vessel. With each retelling, subtle changes occur. Certain details receive emphasis. Others fade into the background. Historians are keenly aware of this process because it influences how evidence is perceived. Popular versions of the story sometimes amplify mystery while minimizing context. Historical research seeks to reverse this tendency by returning attention to documented facts. Yet even historians recognize that storytelling plays a valuable role. Without stories, many people would never encounter the past at all. The challenge lies in distinguishing evidence from embellishment. Maritime historians often compare the abandoned ship to other famous mysteries. Some similarities emerge. In many cases, incomplete evidence allows multiple interpretations to coexist. Yet the abandoned vessel remains distinctive because of its simplicity. There is no need for elaborate conspiracies. There is no need for hidden treasure or secret plots. The mystery survives on its own merits. A ship was found without its crew. The explanation remains uncertain. That alone is enough. This simplicity contributes to its enduring appeal. Complex mysteries can become inaccessible. Simple mysteries invite participation. Anyone can look at the evidence and ask the same questions historians ask. What happened? Why did they leave? Could the outcome have been different? These questions require no specialized training to appreciate. They touch upon universal concerns involving risk, judgment, and survival. The mystery also serves as a reminder of the ocean's role in human history. Imagine the vastness of the sea during the age of sail. Ships operated far from immediate assistance. Communication delays measured in weeks or months were normal. Decisions made aboard vessels often occurred beyond the observation of anyone else. This isolation created opportunities for mysteries to emerge and persist. Modern technology has reduced many uncertainties, yet the ocean retains elements of unpredictability. Historians studying the abandoned ship often note that it belongs to a broader tradition of maritime stories reflecting humanity's complex relationship with the sea. As research continues, new evidence occasionally appears regarding related topics such as weather patterns, maritime procedures, or historical context. Yet none of these discoveries have resolved the central question completely. The mystery remains intact. Historians generally accept that a definitive answer may never emerge. This acceptance is not a failure. It is an acknowledgement of historical reality. Not every question receives a final answer. Some remain open. The abandoned ship occupies this category. It challenges investigators while rewarding curiosity. It encourages analysis while resisting closure. Perhaps that is why it continues captivating audiences long after the original voyage ended. The mystery offers something increasingly rare in a world accustomed to immediate information: uncertainty. It reminds us that the past is not fully knowable. Some events leave behind fragments rather than complete narratives. Historians can illuminate possibilities, evaluate probabilities, and provide context. They cannot always recover certainty. And so the abandoned ship continues sailing through historical memory, carried forward not by wind or current, but by questions. Questions asked by sailors, investigators, historians, and dreamers. Questions that remain unanswered. Questions that ensure the mystery will endure for generations yet to come. Part 8: Legends, Rumors, and Ocean Myths. How the story grew. As the years turn into decades and the decades gradually become generations, the mystery of the abandoned ship begins a transformation that has happened to many unusual historical events. What started as a real maritime incident slowly grows beyond the boundaries of documented evidence and enters the world of legend. This process is neither sudden nor deliberate. It occurs naturally whenever human beings encounter unanswered questions. Facts provide structure, but mysteries invite imagination. Where evidence ends, stories often begin. The abandoned vessel, discovered drifting across the ocean without a crew, possesses exactly the qualities necessary for such a transformation. It is strange enough to be memorable, simple enough to be retold, and unresolved enough to encourage endless speculation. Imagine sailors gathering in a harbor tavern during the years following the discovery. The room is filled with lantern light, the smell of salt water, and with smoke lingering in the air. Ships arrive from distant ports carrying news, rumors, and stories. Maritime culture has always depended upon storytelling. Long voyages create a desire for conversation, and unusual events quickly become favorite topics. Somewhere among the discussions, someone mentions the ship found with no crew. Another sailor adds a detail he heard from a friend. A third recalls reading a newspaper account. The story begins moving from person to person, changing slightly each time it is told. This evolution is almost unavoidable. Human memory is not a perfect recording device. We remember certain details vividly while forgetting others. We emphasize dramatic moments and simplify complicated explanations. Over time, these small changes accumulate. The mystery remains recognizable, but its edges become less precise. Imagine the original facts being wrapped gradually in layers of interpretation. A missing detail becomes an opportunity for speculation. An uncertain timeline becomes evidence of something unusual. A practical explanation becomes less exciting than a mysterious one. None of this requires dishonesty. Most storytellers genuinely believe they are preserving the essence of the event. Yet the result is a story increasingly shaped by imagination as well as evidence. Maritime communities are particularly fertile environments for such developments. Sailors spend long periods confronting the unknown. The sea itself encourages reflection upon forces beyond human control. Storms appear suddenly. Fog hides horizons. Vast distances separate ships from assistance. Under such conditions, unusual stories acquire additional significance. They become ways of understanding an unpredictable world. The abandoned ship, therefore, enters a tradition much older than itself, joining countless tales of strange discoveries, unexplained disappearances, and mysterious voyages. Imagine a young sailor hearing the story for the first time. He listens as an older seaman describes a vessel found drifting silently across the ocean. No crew, no passengers, no explanation. The image is powerful, captures attention immediately. Human beings are naturally fascinated by absence. We expect ships to contain people. When that expectation is violated, curiosity follows. The story spreads because it evokes questions that everyone understands. What happened? Where did they go? Why was the ship left behind? As the mystery travels across ports and generations, rumors begin appearing. Imagine one storyteller suggesting that a sudden storm frightened the crew into abandoning ship. Another claims unusual sounds were heard aboard before the disappearance. A third hints at strange lights seen on the horizon. None of these additions are supported by strong evidence, yet they persist because they satisfy emotional needs. People prefer stories with vivid imagery. Ambiguity can feel unsatisfying. Rumors therefore provide details where history remains silent. The process resembles the growth of a tree. A small seed of uncertainty produces branches of speculation extending in many directions. Newspapers contribute significantly to this evolution. Imagine editors recognizing that mysterious stories attract readers. Articles describing the abandoned vessel are reprinted, summarized, and discussed. Some publications remain cautious. Others emphasize dramatic possibilities. Headlines often favor intrigue because intrigue sells newspapers. Over time, the mystery reaches audiences far removed from the original event. Readers who never saw the ship and never met anyone connected to it nevertheless become invested in the story. This expansion changes the nature of the mystery. It is no longer merely a maritime case. It becomes part of popular culture. Writers play an important role as well. Imagine authors searching for compelling material. A ship found empty at sea offers extraordinary narrative potential. It contains suspense, uncertainty, and evocative imagery. Some writers remain close to documented facts. Others introduce fictional elements to enhance drama. Novels, magazine articles, and adventure stories draw inspiration from the mystery. With each adaptation, the line between history and storytelling becomes slightly more difficult to distinguish. Yet this blending does not necessarily diminish the value of the story. In many ways, it explains its survival. Countless maritime incidents disappear from memory because they lack narrative appeal. The abandoned ship endures because it possesses both historical significance and imaginative power. Ocean myths begin attaching themselves to the mystery as well. Imagine a culture already rich with stories about unexplained phenomena at sea. Sailors have long spoken about ghost ships, mysterious currents, strange weather, and vanished vessels. The abandoned ship fits naturally within this tradition. Even individuals who reject supernatural explanations may find themselves influenced by the atmosphere such stories create. The ocean remains vast and mysterious. A deserted ship drifting across empty water seems almost designed to inspire wonder. As the years continue passing, the original mystery becomes larger than the event itself. The abandoned vessel transforms into a symbol. It represents the unknown. It represents unanswered questions. It represents the limits of human knowledge in the face of nature's vastness. People who know nothing about the specific details may still recognize the basic story. A ship was found. The crew was gone. No one knows exactly why. This simple narrative proves remarkably durable. And because it remains unresolved, each generation feels free to reinterpret it according to its own interests and fears. The mystery survives not despite the growth of legends and rumors, but partly because of them. Stories keep it alive. Imagination carries it forward. And as history gradually blends with folklore, the abandoned ship continues sailing through collective memory, becoming not just an event from the past, but a legend of the sea itself. As the legend of the abandoned ship spreads beyond maritime circles and enters the broader imagination of the public, the mystery begins taking on a life entirely separate from the original investigation. This is one of the most fascinating transformations in historical storytelling. Events rooted in reality often become cultural symbols, And once that process begins, they are no longer sustained solely by evidence. They survive because they speak to something deeper within human nature. The abandoned vessel found drifting without its crew becomes exactly this kind of story. It evolves from a maritime mystery into a modern myth, not because people stop caring about facts, but because the unanswered questions continue resonating long after the details have faded. Imagine a reader discovering the story many decades after the event occurred. They know little about the age of sail. They may never have seen a large sailing vessel in person. Yet the image immediately captures their attention. An empty ship moving silently across the ocean feels haunting in a way that transcends historical context. Certain images possess universal power. A deserted house, an abandoned road, a forgotten city. An empty ship belongs firmly within this category. Human beings instinctively wonder about missing people. We seek explanations for absence. When explanations fail to appear, curiosity becomes almost irresistible. This emotional response helps explain why the story survives. The mystery engages imagination before it engages analysis. As popular interest grows, new versions of the story appear. Imagine magazine articles, radio programs, documentaries, and books revisiting the case repeatedly. Each retelling reflects the era in which it occurs. Some emphasize adventure, others focus on investigation. Still others highlight psychological or supernatural possibilities. The core mystery remains constant, but the surrounding narrative changes. This adaptability contributes to longevity. Stories that survive across generations often possess the ability to absorb new interpretations without losing their essential identity. The abandoned ship demonstrates this quality remarkably well. One era views it as a cautionary tale about the dangers of the sea. Another sees it as a puzzle for amateur detectives. A third treats it as an example of unexplained phenomena. The mystery accommodates all these perspectives simultaneously. Imagine how rumors continue evolving over time. Certain versions of the story begin including details unsupported by historical evidence. Strange weather becomes impossible weather. Unusual circumstances become supernatural circumstances. The crew's disappearance acquires increasingly dramatic explanations. Historians often find this process frustrating because it obscures documented facts. Yet from a cultural perspective, it is entirely understandable. Human beings are storytellers. We are drawn toward narratives that evoke emotion. Mystery alone is compelling. Mystery combined with imagination is even more powerful. The result is a gradual accumulation of folklore around the original event. Some additions remain harmless embellishments. Others become so widespread that many people assume they are factual. Distinguishing between history and legend becomes increasingly challenging. The ocean itself contributes to this development. Imagine standing on a shoreline at dusk, watching the horizon disappear into darkness. Even in the modern world, the sea retains elements of mystery. The scale exceeds ordinary human experience. Its depths remain largely unexplored. Its weather remains unpredictable. Throughout history, oceans have inspired myths precisely because they occupy a space between the familiar and the unknown. The abandoned ship therefore benefits from its setting. Had the same mystery occurred on land, it might have been forgotten more easily. At sea, it becomes part of a larger tradition of maritime wonder. Ghost ship stories begin influencing public perceptions as well. Imagine readers already familiar with tales of vessels found adrift under strange circumstances. The abandoned ship naturally joins this collection. Even when historians emphasize practical explanations, the emotional power of the ghost ship image remains strong. A vessel moving through empty waters without visible human presence feels uncanny. The fact that real explanations probably exist does not diminish the atmosphere. In some ways, the tension between rational interpretation and emotional response makes the story even more compelling. People enjoy mysteries precisely because they allow both perspectives to coexist. One can appreciate evidence while still feeling wonder. Another reason the story grows is that it lacks a definitive ending. Imagine a mystery that concludes neatly. Evidence appears. The culprit is identified. The puzzle is solved. Such stories may be satisfying, but they rarely inspire endless discussion. The abandoned ship offers something different. It remains open. Every generation can revisit it. Every reader can form an opinion. Every historian can propose a theory. The absence of closure becomes a source of strength rather than weakness. The mystery survives because it never reaches a final chapter. It invites participation continuously. Consider how many historical events are remembered primarily by specialists. Their significance may be great, but public awareness remains limited. The abandoned ship follows a different path. It enters popular imagination because it touches upon universal themes: uncertainty, isolation, survival, decision-making, the unknown. These themes remain relevant regardless of historical period. People who know nothing about maritime history can still understand the emotional core of the story. A group of people vanished. No one knows exactly why. That simple premise continues resonating because it reflects broader questions about human experience. As the legend grows, the original evidence remains important, but it is no longer the only force sustaining interest. The mystery develops cultural momentum. It becomes part of the shared library of stories people tell about the sea. Historians may debate details. Researchers may analyze records. Yet beyond those discussions exists something larger, a narrative that captures imagination. This narrative travels across books, conversations, classrooms, documentaries, and quiet moments of curiosity. It reminds people that not every question receives an answer. Some stories remain unfinished. Some voyages never fully explain themselves. And perhaps that is why the abandoned ship continues drifting through memory long after the ocean carried it across the waves. It survives not merely as a historical event, but as a legend born from uncertainty, sustained by imagination, and carried forward by the timeless human desire to understand the unknown. Part 9: Why the Mystery Endures, the Ship That Never Explained Itself. As our journey through this remarkable maritime mystery approaches its final chapter, it is worth pausing to consider a question that extends beyond the abandoned ship itself. Why do certain mysteries survive while others disappear? History contains countless unsolved events. Ships have vanished, records have been lost, and questions have remained unanswered across every century of human experience. Yet only a small number of these mysteries continue capturing imaginations long after the people directly involved have passed away. The abandoned ship found drifting without its crew belongs to that rare category. Generations have come and gone since the vessel was discovered. Technologies have transformed the world. The age of sail has faded into history, and yet the mystery remains alive. To understand why, we must look beyond the specific details of the case and consider the deeper themes it represents. Imagine the moment when the boarding party first stepped onto the deserted deck. The image remains powerful even now. A ship is present. The ocean is present. The evidence of human activity is present. Yet the people themselves are missing. This combination creates a unique emotional effect. Human beings are naturally drawn toward patterns. We expect causes to produce effects. We expect stories to have endings. We expect actions to leave explanations behind. The abandoned ship violates these expectations. It offers the setting of a story without its conclusion. The result is a narrative gap that invites endless curiosity. Every generation that encounters the mystery feels the same impulse, the desire to complete the story. Yet the missing pieces remain absent. This tension between what is known and what is unknown gives the mystery extraordinary durability. Imagine a mystery that was solved immediately after discovery. Investigators identify the cause. Evidence confirms the explanation. The event enters the historical record and gradually fades from public attention. Such outcomes are common. Closure often reduces fascination. The abandoned ship follows the opposite path. Because certainty never arrives, curiosity never fully disappears. The mystery remains active rather than settled. Historians continue examining evidence. Readers continue forming theories. Storytellers continue retelling the tale. The absence of a definitive answer becomes the source of its survival. Another reason the mystery endures involves its simplicity. Many historical puzzles require extensive background knowledge to appreciate. Complex political events, economic disputes, or legal controversies may fascinate specialists, but remain inaccessible to wider audiences. The abandoned ship requires no such expertise. The central question is immediately understandable. A ship was found. The crew was gone. Why? This simplicity allows the story to cross cultural and generational boundaries. Children understand it. Historians understand it. Sailors understand it. The mystery speaks a universal language. Imagine how different audiences respond to the story. Some focus on the historical evidence. Others imagine the emotional experiences of the crew. Some are fascinated by maritime life. Others are drawn toward the psychological dimensions of decision-making. The mystery accommodates all these perspectives because it contains elements relevant to each. It is simultaneously a historical investigation, a maritime story, a human drama, and an intellectual puzzle. Few narratives possess such versatility. The ocean itself contributes significantly to the mystery's enduring power. Imagine the sea stretching endlessly toward the horizon. Even today, despite satellites and advanced technology, the ocean retains an aura of mystery. Much of it remains unexplored. The scale exceeds ordinary human experience. Throughout history, people have projected hopes, fears, and questions onto the sea. The abandoned ship benefits from this cultural association. A deserted vessel drifting across open water feels more mysterious than a comparable event occurring on land. The environment amplifies the story. The ocean becomes an active participant in the mystery, not because it explains what happened, but because it symbolizes the unknown. Historians often emphasize another important factor. The mystery reflects real human uncertainty. Many fictional mysteries are carefully constructed to maximize suspense. The abandoned ship is different. Its uncertainty is authentic. Real people confronted circumstances that remain only partially understood. Their decisions produced consequences that investigators still debate. This authenticity gives the story weight. It reminds us that history is not a collection of predetermined outcomes. People act without knowing the future. They make choices under conditions of limited information. Sometimes those choices produce mysteries. The abandoned vessel illustrates this reality perfectly. Imagine the crew during their final known hours aboard the ship. Whatever happened, they did not know they were creating a historical puzzle. They were living ordinary lives shaped by immediate concerns. This perspective humanizes the mystery. It transforms the crew from abstract figures into individuals navigating uncertainty. We may never know their exact thoughts, but we recognize the broader experience. Everyone faces moments where decisions must be made without complete knowledge. The mystery therefore resonates because it reflects something universal about human existence. Another reason the story survives is that it encourages participation. Imagine two people discussing the mystery. One favors a weather-related explanation. The other emphasizes human error. Both can point to evidence supporting their views. The conversation remains open because the evidence permits multiple interpretations. This openness invites engagement. Unlike stories with fixed conclusions, the abandoned ship allows each generation to become part of the investigation. Readers are not passive observers. They become participants in the search for answers. As time continues passing, the mystery acquires additional significance. It becomes a reminder of the limits of historical knowledge. Modern culture often values certainty. We expect information to be available instantly. The abandoned ship challenges this expectation. It demonstrates that some questions remain unresolved despite careful investigation. Rather than diminishing the story, this uncertainty enhances it. The mystery teaches humility. It reminds us that the past does not always surrender its secrets completely. Some stories remain unfinished. Some voyages leave only fragments behind. And in those fragments, future generations discover opportunities for wonder, reflection, and curiosity. The abandoned ship endures because it occupies a rare space where evidence and imagination meet. It is grounded in reality yet open to interpretation. It is historical yet timeless. It offers clues without conclusions. And because it never fully explains itself, it continues inviting people aboard, generation after generation, to stand upon its silent deck and ask the same enduring question. What happened here? And so, as the night grows quieter and the waves gently fade into the distance, our journey through one of history's strangest maritime mysteries comes to an end. Tonight, we've traveled back into the age of sail, when vast oceans separated continents and every voyage carried an element of uncertainty. We followed an ordinary ship setting out on what appeared to be a routine journey. We've stood on the deck of the vessel as it crossed the open sea beneath changing skies and shifting winds. We've witnessed the moment another ship spotted it drifting alone upon the horizon. And we've stepped aboard one of the most unsettling discoveries in maritime history. A ship still afloat. A ship still carrying its cargo. A ship still capable of sailing. Yet completely empty. No captain. No crew. No passengers. Only silence. Together, we've examined the clues left behind, followed the official investigations, explored the theories proposed by historians, and considered the many possibilities that have attempted to explain what happened aboard. Was it a storm? A tragic miscalculation? A moment of fear during uncertain conditions? Or something that history simply failed to record? The truth is that we may never know. And perhaps that uncertainty is the reason the mystery continues to fascinate people so many years later. In a world where most questions eventually find answers, there is something uniquely captivating about a story that refuses to explain itself. The abandoned ship reminds us that history is not always complete. Some records disappear. Some witnesses are lost. Some events leave behind only fragments. And sometimes the ocean keeps its secrets. Yet even without a final answer, these mysteries still have value. They connect us to the people who came before us. They encourage curiosity. They remind us of the vastness of the world and the limits of human knowledge. And they invite us to keep exploring. If you enjoyed tonight's journey into maritime history and would like to hear more stories about lost voyages, forgotten civilizations, ancient mysteries, shipwrecks, explorers, hidden treasures, and remarkable events from the past, please consider subscribing to the channel. Your support helps us continue creating long-form history for sleep adventures designed to relax, entertain, and gently carry you into another time and place. There are still countless mysteries waiting beyond the horizon. More ships to discover, more stories to uncover, and more journeys through history yet to begin. For now, let the ocean grow calm once more. Imagine the abandoned vessel drifting quietly beneath a sky filled with stars. Its sails moving softly in the night breeze. Its secrets resting somewhere beyond reach. And the endless sea stretching away into darkness. Thank you for joining me on this voyage. Good night. Sleep well. And may calm waters and peaceful dreams carry you gently through the night.